fade, slowing down and making no time. I gotta keep it rolling. Those in the windshield wipers snapping out the tempo, playing perfect rhythm with the song on the radio. I gotta keep it rolling.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Rideshare Rodeo podcast. Now in year 5, as of today, no less. The OG Tuesday Drop podcast. You can find it on all audio platforms, or you can find it on ridesharerodeo.com. Before we get into it tonight, I want to give a couple shout outs. I haven't done this in a minute. I want to give a shout out to 2 audio podcasts. This is for my audio podcast listeners. Make sure, as always, to check out my brothers over in Michigan, the Gig Economy podcast. It's not Jason and Jesper anymore. Jesper has moved on. But Larry from Bowling Green, Kentucky, and Jason from Michigan co-host the show, and it's a great podcast. Check it out, you guys, if you're not already listening. And then many of you guys listen to the roundtable drops. Well, if you do, you know that sometimes even more than me. I mean, I'm very rare do I miss one, but missed a couple. But very rarely the second in line for that is Kim's Side Money Plans. Well, Kim also, she has her YouTube channel and stuff, but she also has a audio podcast out now. So I'd say everybody needs to check that out as well. As you audio podcast people know, the sound on the audio podcast is so much better than any other platforms we use. So kick back. Let's get into this a little bit. We ran a little bit over last week, and going to keep it to the time this week, I think. I'm going to try. I think we're going to be able to do this no problem. And I want to talk about something first that's really been bugging me. Uber Teen. It's not just gum anymore. No, it never was. Never, but it sounds like gum, doesn't it? Uber Teen. Uber Teen. Hey man, give me a stick of that Uber Teen. You know? Sounds like some kind of gum. But anyway, it's not gum. It's an illegal system that is irresponsible, immoral, unethical, and should not be being used. But let's go back in time a little bit. And I won't take as much time as I did earlier this week when this weekend I did a piece on this on 13 Minutes of News on the YouTube channel. For you audio podcast listeners, I tried bringing 13 over here. You guys just weren't into that short 13-minute clip. I only did it once or twice, and it just didn't get the downloads like the audio podcast does. So I know you like the long forms, but if you ever want to go listen to 13, it is on YouTube. And actually, I cut it down to 10 minutes, and it's difficult. I have to cut out some things if you're on TikTok, both at Rideshare Rodeo, YouTube, or TikTok. But Uber Teen, if you're not familiar with the way TikTok algorithm works and its advertising and things like that, I was mentioning this to some people last week, and they're like, of course, yes, there are some TikTok channels, just like YouTube channels, that promote Uber Teen or that are a paid sponsorship or affiliation or whatever. And first of all, on YouTube, I got to say, I've never seen any. I have seen a couple of channels that are like, hey, and they almost look like a, somewhat professional commercial. But it's not. It's somebody's channel saying Uber Teen's safe. But those have been rare and in between. And here we are at the beginning of May, and we're about to go into summer, and we know Uber wants to boost their rideshare sales up big time. They need to. And I think what is happening here is, if you guys look, if you're not on TikTok, I'll explain this much about it. Don't worry, I won't. If you're not on TikTok and you don't want to be, I know you're not going to be. I'm on there to create, and I also do have a little bit of fun, but I do have to weed through a lot of crap. Yes. But here's the thing. If a company is running an ad on TikTok, it's kind of like an Instagram story or like a Facebook reel. But even harder, you can't go find it. Like I can search for anything on TikTok and find it. I can't search Uber Teen like commercial or even just Uber Teen and even find the commercials. So I've been screen recording them. And we're going to do something with those because they're ridiculous ads. But here's my point. You can't find them, but it literally, like the little badge and avatar, it says Uber Teen, and it's the official Uber site. And it's Uber. I mean, Uber's paying this advertisement, and there's like 5 or 6 of them out. All of them consist of a mom in different scenarios. One's at the, working as a nurse. One of them's at home saying, oh, she made plans. She can't get you to the mall. I mean, to be honest, every one of the excuses of why they need Uber Teen in all 5 of the commercials I've seen is pretty ridiculous because none of them are like, well, my brother cut his arm off. I got to get him to the hospital. Like they're all like, oh, mom, I forgot to buy those earrings. Like, really? Like, first of all, you're not even selling it right. But they're saying, hey, for those of you that don't think Uber Teen is safe, and now for all of you Uber drivers, pay attention here. For those of you that don't think Uber Teen is safe, realize Uber, the drivers on the Uber Teen platform side are the most vetted drivers and have undergone complete criminal background checks. Let me make that perfectly clear what that really means. Let's translate it. What this unbelievable background check, completely vetted, like background check galore. We dug deep. Okay, that's a $23 checker background check. And the only qualification Uber requires to do rides for Uber Teen is that you have 200 rides. You could have done 200 rides 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Get back on the platform, do like just active, but after like do a ride and you'll see Uber Teen. Uber Teen is something that once you do an update, if you haven't already, you actually like, just remember when Uber Pet came out. And if you don't, there's the, you can go into the advanced settings and you can find Uber Pet and you can turn it off. That way you don't see those offers. Uber Teen's the same way. It comes default on, but you guys need to turn it off. And instead of going down the history lesson of us veteran drivers, we know for fact, Uber has always said, no unaccompanied minors. And they have not minced words about it. Like that used to be a way to cancel because we'd get pings at the high school all the time. Now you can avoid them. But at our high schools here in Denver, there's always a police car up front. So I could pull up behind it and I could wait, put the window cracked a little down on the passenger side, lock the doors. And when they obviously approach and try and go in the back door, it's locked. And I have the window cracked and I say, hey, yeah, let me see your ID. Of course they're not 18. And back then it was, well, my parents said it's fine. So what they were doing was just mirroring their parents' account with their parents' permission onto their phone. And some of them would even call their parents and get the parents on the phone and say, hey, just take them. It's okay. And I'd say, no. Well, let's now fast forward to now. I mean, their whole time it's been no unaccompanied minors. Great. Let's fast forward to now. So no unaccompanied minors at all. But now, not only is it kind of okay, no. Now it's their pitch, their big pitch coming into summer. Uber Teen is safe. Do it. Here's the thing they don't tell you guys, and we talk about this all the time. Do not think for 1 second that Uber. It's a tough subject because all the apps do their thing. All the apps do so many things wrong, and they manipulate and they gamify and they do this, that, and the other. But Uber, don't put for a second out of your head that like Uber Connect was a criminal ring the very first time. That was all it was being used for. Then it was moved to other markets. They've launched that thing like 4 times now. I mean, we make jokes about it, being like Uber drug dealer. You don't know what's in those packages. Those are packed by an individual that has an Uber account. So what? Everybody has an Uber account. I mean, if you have a credit card that can, validate a $5 charge, you have an Uber account. So, I mean, don't come to me with that. That's bull. But Uber Connect doesn't have you covered. You guys don't care. I mean, let me be honest. Maybe some of you who do some Uber on the side and own a black car service or a limousine service, which is very few, you might have complete commercial coverage. And maybe under that, Uber Connect would be protected. However, Uber Teen is not protected even under that mass commercial thing. So let me put it this way. If you guys are familiar, if you've been listening to the audio podcast for a while, you know this. I had a couple of startups on. The CEOs. One was in Ohio, and I can't remember. The other one was on the East Coast as well, somewhere. But they were startups like Hop, Skip, Drive. There used to be GoGo Grandparent. That was then moved to the Uber platform. But Hop, Skip, Drive are actual W-2 workers who have some flex time, but they are actually vetted. They are actually deep background checked, like the things that Uber pretends like they're claiming here. And then they're bonded by Hop, Skip, Drive. When I talked to the two startups who tried to have a Hop, Skip, Drive, and for those of you that are not familiar with any of these that I'm discussing, Hop, Skip, Drive drives children, teenagers. You know what I mean? So there's Hop, Skip, Drive, and then there's been about 10 startups around the country. There might be, but the two I know, there was three, but I had two on the podcast at separate times, and then I knew of a third. All three of the ones I knew are all out of business, and for one reason: insurance. They tried to mock what a Hop, Skip, Drive had, and they had mass business. The business was there. I mean, transporting kids around these days, parents don't want to move their own kids around. They'd much rather pay $5 to a driver that they have no clue who it is. Now that's taking it a little far. Obviously, this is why if you need a service like this, I would highly recommend, and I have no affiliation to them, I would highly recommend, if you don't have a friend, if you don't have any other means and you need to use a service like this, I would say look into Hop, Skip, Drive. Don't look into Uber. Even you parents should know better. I mean, again, here's how people often say it to me. It wouldn't be on the app if it's not legal. Really? Again, let's go to Uber Connect. Let's go to some of the other things. Let's go, and then in 13 minutes, I was talking, I'll just say it, like we were talking about, I was saying how Travis started, at least he cared somewhat about the drivers, but then we have Grayball and 57 million hacks of customers being covered up by, before the FCC caught it, and they caught it anyway. Stealing of autonomous, when the autonomous engineer director came over from Alphabet Waymo to Uber, he brought all of the documents. You remember this guy going to jail? Anthony, what's his name? Lavowski, maybe, or something. But anyway, I mean, this is just the kind of crimes they create. But look, when you're talking about kids, I remember when the teenagers were trying to use it before Uber Teen. No way I'm letting them in. Well, now you're still not going to get in trouble to not accept it. But I'm asking all of you, please, unless you have worked for Hop, Skip, Drive, or you fully understand this, and unless you went to your insurance agent and said, can I, because this is so much different. There's periods 0, 1, 2, and 3. Let's only talk about 3. 3 is the point where you pick up your customer. They are in your car until the time they get out. 0, 1, 2 is 0's idle. 1 is idle while waiting for trips. And 2 is you've got a ping and you're on the way to the drug. 3 is the big one. 3 is once you have them in the car. Okay. If you go to your insurance agent, most of the time Uber has you in the case of an accident. And I talk to Brian Greening, the CEO and founder of Legal Rideshare, all the time. If you guys ever need legal advice, Bryant will give you a free consultation. He's the largest rideshare law firm in the country, legalrideshare.com. But Brian has been on the podcast a few times, and he'll tell you, there's no way that in no world is this legal. The parents don't know. Again, they're just putting their trust in this company. Like, well, they wouldn't have it on the app unless it was. I mean, first of all, I wouldn't let my kid have gone on that. And that was part of a big reason of it. I do have a kid, and it did matter to me. But so you're putting this kid in the car. If anything happens, the kid accuses the adult of something. The the adult is driving perfect, who's driving the child, and gets sideswiped by a drunk driver, it's not going to matter that the other driver's drunk. I mean, I'm just presenting scenarios where these are life enders. These aren't like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. I'm going to hire a lawyer and get this solved. And these are life enders. You know, if a kid were to die in your care, first of all, and we won't even talk about death. Like, just anything happens, your insurance will not cover you. And that's why I say call your insurance. And maybe they do have a policy, but I doubt they're going to even offer it to you, because unaccompanied minors, that word, I mean, that's a hard hitting word. And your insurance agent knows that. And most probably there aren't even commercial ones. Like, because I mean, I know that from driving when I drove with the limo company, it was very difficult a procedure to be able to take kids, high school kids, for prom. Even that. And you had some that were 18, some that weren't, but you had to have a parent come and sign document. I mean, it was a whole procedure. And yet these were the kids who were at least at adult age, and you were in the front, they were in the back, and it was a group setting. And it's a little different, but like, I couldn't have done a black car service for a child. So it's a very, and even that is a different classification of insurance that limo company had to carry for me to be able to do that. So look at, I would almost guess 0 people in this country doing rideshare, 0. And I know that sounds so like, really, Steve, come on, I'm going to find one. Okay, go find me one. Go find me one who is properly insured to drive children, and email me, steve@ridesharerodeo.com, because your insurance agent will tell you, no way, we do not have you covered under any periods. And even if you're carrying whatever, the top end rideshare insurance, or you're in the lowest grade of main commercial insurance, you are not covered. Don't do it. Do not do it. Let's see. What else do we got? DoorDash. So the DoorDash tier system is rolling out, huh? You guys, this is getting to be worse and worse and worse. And if you didn't hear, it actually dropped on audio podcast too. It was 2 episodes back. I had Mike Harubi on, and we talked about portable benefits. And Mike related portable benefits to portable deficits. So I'll let you guys go to that episode. I know a lot of you audio podcast listeners have auto download and auto delete after you hear it. So you've heard all the podcasts and they just roll and roll and roll. And I appreciate all of you for that. But if you haven't, go listen to that piece, because I was going to talk about portable benefits tonight, but I don't think we'll have the time. But anyway, getting into DoorDash, this tier system is a huge problem, and for many reasons. I mean, we already know that all of the apps have their issues, but DoorDash has been in the employment, they've crossed the employment line so many times. The other companies, Uber, like I was saying, Instacart and Rodeo, that you guys, you guys know, how I feel about Instacart and Rodeo. They are literally the apps I hate the most. And for one reason, though, because I shouldn't even say hate. I just don't like them at all, because they don't pay anything. Like, and I got other people in this market who are drivers and stuff and do multi-apping, and we all know this is just a fact. I mean, even every app, you got to know its times and when to use it. But I mean, Instacart's been just dead here forever. And again, by dead, I mean, there's some orders and stuff, but then we talked like last week about Amazon stepping outside of just fresh and Whole Foods and moving into grocery space for, what is it, $9.99 a month for in-store prices delivered within an hour. I don't know about you guys in your markets, but I see fleets of Kroger refrigeration trucks now all over my neighborhood too. They're all over Denver. So these are 26-foot trucks that for, what is it, $5.99 deliver in a 3-hour window, and for $7.99 deliver in a 1-hour window each time. But now on Amazon for $9.99 a month or $99 a year, you can opt into the new Amazon food delivery program. I'm not sure of its exact name, but it involves what used to be the Whole Foods and all that stuff. But now with that, you can have your Kroger, your Safeway, your whatever grocery store. They're all going to be in there. Maybe not some of the real small ones, but anything main in the state you're in, any of the big ones, they're going to be on there and pay in store prices too. So, but so anyway, Roadie and Instacart, not my favorite apps. The pay is not great. I mean, sometimes I can grab a Roadie after doing a curry to make a little sense of coming back. But if it's in the day, I'm also sometimes fine sitting wherever that curry delivery goes to and just kind of working around that area a little bit till the next curry comes out, because it very well might ping me to that area. But regardless, if I want to find my way back to my neighborhood or to or even a different part of town or even out of town, I can look for a roadie. Usually I've told you guys the only things I really do are maybe the prescriptions, because they're, very short miles and they're not high paying. They're $7-8, but it's usually for like a mile or two. So, those are easy. You just pull through the drive-through, grab it, drop it off if it's on your way back. Where I was going with the Instacart and the roadie thing is, as much as I don't like them, and as much as I think bots control the Instacart platform and lots of problems on the roadie platform, they're 100% transparent. I know that it can be argued that, yes, there is a premium shopper on the Diamond or whatever on the Instacart platform. Sure. Okay, I get that. But it's still a little different to me, because the orders still come through and there's zero acceptance rate. Like, Instacart doesn't have an acceptance rate, neither does Roadie. Roadie has no, Roadie has no way of going, oh, you rank here. They don't care. They don't even have a ranking. I love it. It's just the orders are crap. However, there's no rating. If you do something wrong, you'd be deactivated, is my guess. But otherwise it's like, here's all the offers. Which ones do you want? But with Instacart, their threshold and leniency is pretty big too. Like, I'm still active. I've barely ever done any. But I keep it active. They keep my background check going. I'm good to go. Yeah, I turn it on and I don't, it's not an acceptance rate thing. There's the offers. If you want them, you take them. I love those kind of apps, so I can't get too mad. But now where I am going to get really mad, and other apps have their own different ways of doing these things, but DoorDash, whoa. I mean, this DoorDash tier system that's rolling out right now, it's like it went up a whole nother level on how they're going to make things tougher on the drivers. They've definitely taken the customer experience to an all-time low. Their principles have reached the all-time low. And it's crazy, because without customers, what's the point? I know that they have, they only showed a 3-cent loss per stock in Q1, or no, that's what they predicted. And it ended up being a 6-cent loss per share. And that might not sound like a lot to you guys for a quarter, but when you're that much off, it actually is throwing people, because they know that so much more is being spent on DoorDash than to each customer. So it's not like the volume's up. Like, let's use simple numbers. 1,000 orders last year are now 1,000 orders last year made this much. Now they're not able to do 1,000 orders. So let's say 700 orders instead of 1,000, same area, same time period this year. 700 orders are making just a little above what this was, because everything's so inflated on the prices and the menu items and all this. We've talked about this at length. But because of that, they're making a little more, but really they're not, because constantly the amount of customer and the retention rate for customers is kind of like drivers. So if you think about the retention rate for drivers, right, it's always kind of, at times it peaks and it's not as much onboarding, but people are getting paid well. Then they onboard too many and it drops. And so kind of does like that. Well, the customers forever have been like this, and little pockets of ups, downs. And right now the customer retention is going like this. So it's that same trajectory. And by the way, listening on the audio podcast, I was moving my fingers to show you what up and down was. And it was not good for DoorDash. But DoorDash's customer retention rate is getting lower. DoorDash customers who were using the app a certain amount of times per month. There's a lot of studies out on this stuff. So, like if they used it, let's say, let's just keep it simple, 5 times a month, maybe now they're using it 3. Um, it's just order volumes down. Drivers are up. We've talked about, and again, guys, don't forget, don't confuse illegal immigrants with the illegal migrant situation that we face, and we know that the gig economy space faces. You guys got to know this. I mean, this is not. We're not. This isn't bashing anything. This is not bashing anything. This is just fact, and it's being talked about in every city in the United States. So I know most of you understand. To those who don't, I'm pretty shocked in the ones who don't, because it is so clearly obvious. And but they will soon. I mean, there's no way around it. I know people who were telling me before, "Oh, I know what you're going through, but we're not seeing it here." And now it's like, dude, we're totally seeing it here. So everybody's getting it. There's no way out of it. But DoorDash's tier system is going to make it harder. I don't know what the benefit is now. The seems like the staying top dasher is going to be extremely difficult. Like, to be able to dash. I'm not even sure that it's going to involve dash now. I don't know. I've been very confused on why they're doing this again at a time when lawmakers are looking at this company and saying, "You guys are one of the worst. You guys are definitely the worst with the illegal accounts." And in this case, guys, I need to specify. Now, I'm not just talking about illegal migrants. I'm also talking about people who maybe were kicked off the platform, who are from wherever and have been on it for years and got kicked off their account and went and purchased an account to keep doing it. There's a lot of those too. Those are also illegal accounts. Anything illegal accounts to me is, you should not, that's not your name. It's not your account. You should not be doing this. But here's the thing. DoorDash doesn't care. Their barrier to entry is the easiest there is. Their ability to switch bank accounts, easiest app there is. So you'd think they'd start wanting to crack down. A lot of the other apps, like when I see these things that, like these cities that have gone, that are saying the volume's just down because of Seattle and New York and Prop 22 and stuff. Well, I mean, they're able to make it so that these drivers aren't getting enough time because there isn't enough offers. And I know in Southern California, I know that's a different game. I know that those drivers stay very busy, and I know Prop 22 benefits them. But as we all know, Prop 22 was not invented for delivery drivers. It was brought about by the crippling and destructive law, Assembly Bill 5, which went into effect in January 2020, which destroyed all independent contractor businesses who are true self-employed, and put them up to an ABC test that's just a standard that can't be held by. Well, all of the gig companies, Uber, Lyft, Grubhub, Uber Eats, Postmates, for whatever that's worth, DoorDash, they got their money together as the Flex Association and formed Prop 22. And they didn't think about, they didn't really think about the food delivery space because it wasn't doing much. Even its growth rate wasn't showing much. But when it went into effect and when they designed Prop 22, even though it was voted on in November of 2020, they designed it right when AB 5 went into effect and put out Prop 22 January 31st of 2020. We still were about a month and a half out from the pandemic and about 2 months out from the complete lockdown, shelter in place, all those things we never want to remember again that we all had to do. But we were still about, a certain ways out from that. Nobody knew that. So they didn't really think it through about Prop 22. So that's why a lot of people benefit in the delivery space from Prop 22. But a lot of these cities that have those now are just hoping that people just decide, I'm not going to work them anymore. Like I know in New York that you can only schedule door dashing. It doesn't even matter what your tier is pretty much. I mean, they have 2-minute wait. We all know they throttle at 65%, all this crazy stuff. But here's the thing. You can only have a certain amount of drivers on the road. And we know that even if you schedule, so if you, like me, I'm a bottom feeder. I don't do a lot of DoorDash, do a lot of curry and other things, but if I schedule, I can then work that scheduled block. I don't think that's right. I mean, again, I'm not complaining as a non-top dasher. I just know this breaks independent contractor rules to have a schedule and to have, oh, if you're above this, you'll see the better offers. You can't do that. That breaks independent contractor rules. You can't be tracking how we drive because of a checkbox that says I agree on a terms of service. That breaks independent contractor law. And trust me, I've talked to some lawmakers there are a lot of lawmakers who literally are getting like they've even said, I mean, I've had people tell me that I don't care about the box anymore. And these are like real people who understood it and used to back it. Well, they agreed to the terms of service. There are people now saying, I don't care about that box anymore. That's bullcrap because you're hiding way too much stuff and you're making people click it. It's not right. And in those terms of service, often what they put in the terms of service breaks the state's independent contractor rules. So therefore, this is why we see so many fights and so many allowances, and why legislation that's starting to roll out is not looking good for a lot of places, because they know all this. They're trying to find a way to work with these companies, allow them to classify workers as independent contractors and not workers. Trust me, that's the way I want it. If it was a W-2 job, first of all, you'd have to be doing shifts. You'd probably only work for one app. Which one would you choose? To me, it'd be like none, because I wouldn't want to work for any of these. I like juggling my time. I like having that flexibility. I need it. And sometimes I do other things as well. So I just can't be tied down to like, it becomes a W-2 under a franchise model. But DoorDash is pushing every limit, I feel like. While the other ones aren't doing a ton to really scale back and show lawmakers, we're serious. We're going to make some changes. We're very sorry about this. At that same time, DoorDash is pushing forward and saying, nah, we don't care. Illegal accounts, bring them. Tiers, we're getting worse. And I think they're just seeing summer rolling up and thinking, well, we'll just get rid of a lot of people. But I wanted to bring this to everybody's attention too, while we're on the DoorDash topic. I was reading something that's pretty disturbing, actually. What is today? It came out a couple days ago on The Verge. DoorDash won't let you tip New York City drivers without the app. But this story even gets a little weirder than that. I mean, first of all, that's just weird anyway. But so it goes on to talk about, and you can find all these stories at uberlyftdrivers.com or at ridesharerodeo.com, where the podcast is. And in the menu on ridesharerodeo.com, you can see gig news. Click that. It'll take you over to uberlyftdrivers.com. And in the last couple days, I've posted some stories. All these are in them. But this was a guy ordering food on the DoorDash platform in New York. And he used to use the service a decent amount, hadn't used it oddly since November of last year. Okay, so he orders, and he understood the minimum wage law and what was going on, but he ordered the food through a computer at home, and he found out that, and so he always had used a computer instead of the app. Find that interesting too. I don't know a lot of people that do that, but okay. Maybe a lot more do than I think. But he used a computer, and what he knew, the system no longer had the availability to tip, not just up front, but even after the service. The only way, if you're using a computer, that you can tip your driver, period. So in New York, you don't even, not only have they buried it, you cannot tip until the food has arrived. You cannot tip until the food has arrived. So even if, like, dude, I understand, and I feel for these drivers and what they're going through, even if they're not seeing it, which I know, which is what bases a lot of these DoorDash people to grab orders and whatnot, I want to just put a standing tip on there. And if I feel like it, I'll add more, the kind of abilities you should have in an app these days, right? Well, you can't even tip. You can't tip on a computer after the fact. You need to call DoorDash and ask for a tip to be added. And even he goes on to say that even in the app, after the food is delivered, it's still difficult to find it. He said it's not something standing out at you when you rate the driver. He says, like, rate driver, and it's not right there. It's not very obvious. Where do I tip this guy? Like he was alluding to the fact that it takes someone who is certain, listen, I'm not stopping dealing with this till I get this driver tipped. And that's kind of like my thing too. Like I wouldn't, I wouldn't just give up and go, well, what have they done? Like, but I can see that a lot of people would. Absolutely. So here's my one question though. Why did they actually remove the option to tip in the website? I understand they're trying to push it till after the fact, but why did they remove it? And if they're doing if everybody's on this minimum wage way of doing things, you really don't have the ability to skip offers in New York because, like I was saying about being scheduled, you can be scheduled like I do here. And then when your schedule comes up, go, sweet, at least I got this 4 hours on DoorDash tonight. In New York, if there's too many drivers on the road because of the new laws, you're just your dash is scheduled or canceled. Your scheduled dash is canceled. Doesn't matter what you are. If you schedule the dash, you're canceled. And it'll say not busy enough. I think this is where a lot of things are moving to, maybe not as harsh a legislation, but ones that are going to have caps on people. And we also have to watch for all these portable benefits. But this guy goes on to say that DoorDash, literally was making it almost next to impossible for him to tip. And it's crazy to me. So there was another option that another situation that he put in here that I really didn't even think about. But he was saying that that a lot of times in New York, and I'm guessing other places as well, especially big metros, there is some restaurants use the DoorDash app to make their orders. So like, let's say that this restaurant wants to let you order through them. Like let's take, for example, okay, on the online ordering page for Han Dynasty, a restaurant in Brooklyn that uses DoorDash, there's no option to tip at checkout. There's also no mention of the ability to tip after the fact. And it used to be there. So my point is like Han Dynasty also has a link. So it looks like their website to do this transaction. But you're doing it through the DoorDash processor. Does that make sense to you all? Like, think of masking and things like that and all the things that, of course, DoorDash is like, hey, listen, if you're going to get some customers, you don't have to have a credit card processor. You can do it through us. We know what that means. They're obviously charging you a lot more than you could if you just had a credit card processing system of your own. However, if half of your business is DoorDash, or 60% and 40% is walk-in clients, and 50% of the walk-in clients are cash, I mean, then all of a sudden you're like, wait, do I need the credit card processors, or is it worth losing the percent or whatever to just let it go to DoorDash? Well, but nonetheless, now that this change has happened, it's changed that infrastructure. So if a person like me was like, okay, well, I always order from Han Dynasty. Okay, well, I go to their website and why can't I tip the guy? It literally takes it away because it's gone on the DoorDash side too. So only in the app, and even in the app, you can't find it. And I just think it's really kind of scummy, because here's what I want to end it with this one. So after all that I just said there, why on earth does DoorDash want to take away the ability to tip? I understand that they're not happy about the Seattle regulation. I understand they're not happy about what they had to fund for Prop 22. I understand that they're not happy with the way things are going in New York City. And I understand that they're not happy with the way that it's looking for a lot of states coming in the next few months. But why on earth would you take away the ability to tip? I mean, I really don't get it. I understand that maybe it's they're processing more money, but I would even think, being the scumbaggery way that they operate, I would think that they would find a way to take a chunk of that tip money too, and say that, well, that's the processing fee for you getting your tip, and somehow get a little something out of that, milk it for something, because it's not like that payment part's going to be bad. As far as I can tell, they literally removed this feature just to hurt the drivers. And almost to say to New York City people, listen, don't worry about the tip. You see how much higher the prices are? That's because of the new city regulation. No, it's not. The city, now I'm not a big fan of how they did that, but that city regulation, first of all, wasn't supposed to be passed on to the customers. They did. They line itemed it in Seattle and New York. Here, you need to pay the regulatory fee. So you're already paying it per order. And then they went and jacked up the prices again at the restaurants. They used this to really jack them up. They jacked up their processing fee and their, anything that was included with taxes. So it's actually that they're making more money out of this crap. Well, why on earth would you take away the ability to tip people? It just blows my mind. Like, knowing the way that they operate, the more money you bring through, even if it's like, here's a $5 tip, I need to get this to this driver. We know they would find a way to say, hey, there's a 50 cent or 25 cent fee to get your tip processed or whatever. Or somehow pass it on to the customer and just call it something else. I mean, straight up lie like they do often. I guess my point is, like, there is no reason to do this other than to almost teach Dashers a lesson, is the way I can say it. Because they don't want this crap landing elsewhere. They don't want to have to do this elsewhere. And how many other cities can they do this in? Because I've talked to a lot of people, only a very few don't understand how this works. Look, some people have said to me, I live in a red state, I'm safe. I live in a blue state, I'm going to be screwed. Listen, if enough states go down, we're all going to be screwed. Right? Because if enough states go down, all of the states will be paying for it. If you live in a red state, it don't matter, because you're gonna somehow be doxxed by DoorDash. So it might not come in the form of legislation, but the legislation from 10, 15 other states. This is why color coding the states don't matter, because it will be spread amongst the United States and it will hurt every state. So it won't take legislation in just your state. We all need to stay on top of this. And we really need to have a way, and I can't tell you the amount of people that I talk to who are very high up on things, who keep saying to me, you need to get a developed communication in there, not just like having somebody like one of the big CEOs, like a Derek Khosrowshahi or something, not just having them on the podcast, but you need to get an open dialogue going with these companies. And I actually have some great minds helping me at this time. And obviously, I'll be reaching out to Sergio and some others too. But I'm talking about people who really are not that familiar with the gig economy, the app-based part of it, but are fighting for legislation for traditional gig workers. So they also know that we're somewhat included. And I've been educating them. They've been educating me, and they're on our side too. So there's a lot to be done. We need to stay on top of this kind of stuff, because I guess we'll end today with one last story that I do have. I had one other one I was hoping to get to. Let me see. Yeah, we can tackle that later. But this one I do want to talk about. So we know that Minnesota's been going through some stuff, right? California, Seattle, Washington State, New York. And Minnesota's like, yeah, we like all those ideas. Let's do that. Well, we know Minnesota tried last year. Didn't work. We know that Minnesota tried this, and the governor vetoed it last year. We know that this year, the city council once again approved these extraordinary rates. It was supposed to be $1.91 for 1 minute and 1 mile for rideshare drivers. And that kind of pay is incredible. Although the problem there becomes that the rates go so high on customers that the demand falls, not only in the amount of drivers that are needed, but there's oversupply of drivers. And not only that, the demand of people wanting to use the platform drops so much. So if you go out for 10 hours a day and you're active for 8 and you make X amount, my guess is you'd go out for 10 hours, you'd be active for 4, and you'd make, 80% of what you are now in 8, but you're still going to be out the same 10 hours because it's active time. But here's the thing. So this year around, they came up with the $1.91 or $1.92, whatever it was for the mile in the minute. And then there was a case study done that was at the request of the governor last year. And the governor said, hey, listen, we need to figure all this out. And that case study came back, and Lyft was thinking about it, and Uber and Lyft said they'd be leaving on May 1st. We know that it's May 7th. But on May 1st, they said they'd be leaving. And the city said, well, wait, we'll make it July 1st. But they were very hardcore about, we passed this, it's going into effect. And again, this year, the mayor even said, no, we're not passing this. And the city council said, yeah, we are. And they just pushed it through anyway. So they were having these different rates for Minneapolis, the Twin Cities is such a majority of Minnesota. But then you got the rest of the state is a lot more rural. And so there were different rates, just kind of like how Washington State broke apart the Seattle stuff. Well, today, this is from Monday, sorry. The Minneapolis City Council said they had reached a compromise in the debate on rideshare minimum wage. Now, remember, the rideshare company said, we'll leave May 1st, as soon as this goes into effect. And it wasn't like May 1st. It was, I even said that it would have to be in the last meeting, which was April 24th or something. And in that April 24th meeting, they did delay the May 1st to July 1st. And then right away, what happened? Uber and Lyft put out articles saying, well, then July 1st, we leave. And so they're trying to scrape together what's going to happen in all this mess. Well, now they say that the Uber Lyft vow to leave Minnesota as lawmakers announce rideshare wage compromise. So here's the thing. So the state lawmakers, along with the Minneapolis City Council, said they have reached a compromise in the debate on the rideshare minimum wage. This gets a little strange here, you guys, so just bear with me. Because we're still going to hear some pretty high amounts. And you got to remember, if you were listening, I did not say Uber and Lyft agreed to this. I just said the Minneapolis City Council and the state lawmakers had reached an agreement without the companies. So Minnesota state lawmakers from both the House and the Senate came together with the Minneapolis City Council to announce a compromise on the much debated minimum wage proposed for rideshare drivers. Okay, now this was done on Monday, May 6th. The new agreement announced they would set a statewide minimum wage of $1.27 per mile and 49 cents a minute. Now you got to remember, the rural part was going to get less than that. And the city of the Twin Cities were going to get higher than that. But it's not that far off. Let's do the math. I mean, you're at $1.76 for a minute and a mile. That's only 15 cents down from the $1.91 you wanted. And that was the top line where Uber and Lyft said we're gone. And then for the rural areas, now you raised it to be this same rate. And I get why, because we had discussed this and there was going to be some big issue if they tried to have a different rate across the country. I guess it's something Washington State is facing as well. It's kind of like a backlash, and they just want to make sure it was sealed up tight. So they made it the same across the state. Well, yeah, because here it is. The original one, the proposed bill that the company said, no way, we'll leave, was $1.40 a mile and 51 cents per minute. So that's $1.91. Now they're at $1.76. Regardless, Uber and Lyft stood by their comment. They're like, well, I mean, we're not. They both said we're not agreeing to this at all, and our plans to leave the city, or at least the Twin Cities, potentially the state, on July 1st are still in effect. If this passes, we will leave. At this point, guys, I don't see how they don't leave. If you guys were listening last week to the 4-year anniversary podcast where I had Mr. Gary Middleton on, Gary'sApps.com. Don't miss them. Gary'sApps.com, people. Safety apps for gig workers. Gary'sApps.com. Did I say that? That one's for you, Gary. But yeah, so I mean, they've come down 15 cents and then they've gone up in the rural areas. So Uber and Lyft are still kind of off to the side laughing. And we're all watching these companies that are coming in here that are saying they're going to be able to pick up the slack when Uber and Lyft vacate. Guys, we know better. We know better. And for anybody, we always say we need to see something like this play out, because if it doesn't, I mean, look at if Uber and Lyft bow to this, and I'm not, you know me, I'm not backing these companies. I was dousing Uber earlier for Uber Teen and a lot of things. So, but here's the thing: if they back down to this, what happens the next day, or then over the course of the next week, especially now, when we still have till November for a lot of legislation to get pushed through? Every other state, city, municipal, town, whatever, everybody in the country will notice this. All eyes on this. If Uber and Lyft were to say, fine, we'll pay the $1.91 or we'll pay the $1.76, well, everybody's going to ask for that. And that becomes an unworkable system. And it would become a system where the customers have to pay so much that it's not affordable to them, like we were talking about with the food delivery and their fall. And we knew the food delivery volume would fall regardless. Again, I'm not saying it's a crash, you guys. I mean, I'd be more worried about a housing crash than food delivery app crashing. However, there's not enough work to go around anymore. Especially to veterans and stuff. I can tell you with the DoorDash platform, we've done enough looking into where they just don't like veteran drivers. Yeah, some slip through and whatnot, but give them a reason and they'll end you. I mean, we've had Marco, my friend, Mr. Nova Dasher, on the podcast a few times, and honestly, he's done 23,000 dashes. I don't know anybody that's done more than him. Maybe Ron in Hawaii, actually. I think Ron's getting close. Boots. Shout out to Boots and to Nova. But I think he's getting close to upward of 30,000. So, of course, there's people. But I mean, sadly, dude, they don't have any kind of, DoorDash doesn't, love Marco so much they wouldn't do anything to him. In fact, they deactivated him for months and didn't even give him cause. So I guess my thing is, whether it be Florida and their legislation, and now California pushing that same legislation to get the restaurant prices done, these companies will find a way to then take it out. You'd think that at some point that would be the breaking level, right? To be the breaking point. Okay, what are you going to do now? You can't go after your customers. You can't go after the businesses. It's we've been going after the businesses. We've been giving it to the riders, and we've kind of been making the customers pay more. We'll give it to the restaurants harder. We'll give it to the drivers harder, and we'll make the customers pay more. They don't seem to give a crap about anybody in the mix. And I know that a lot of you are sitting there going, duh, dude, I get that. But I want you to challenge yourself even and think, what other business in the world doesn't care about its workers, whether they're W-2 or independent contractors, and doesn't care about the work they provide? Their customer service completely sucks. Might as well just be gone. Doesn't care about the restaurants, the people that they're working in partnership with, and rips them off, and at this point doesn't even care about the customers, and literally doesn't. We've seen this time and time again. They just don't. You guys, I mean, it's crazy. And we got lots to talk about, Here we are in year 5 of Rideshare Rodeo, and we still can't run out of content. I mean, I still got stories to go today. Let me see what I did have on here for, Ubers. These are all on ridesharerodeo.com. Click the menu button, go to gig news. It'll take you to uberlyftdrivers.com. But I had ex-Uber CEO Travis Kalanick fighting the companies, the food delivery companies in LA, so that he can get his push done. There's a Boston state auditor says that Uber Lyft drivers could be missing hundreds of millions in lost payments, and the Massachusetts legislation's coming. Uber sued for $312 million by London cab drivers, and a lot of that's the black cabs that they just brought on last year. There was an ex-Uber employee that shared how the company solved chicken and egg problem. Basically, you guys, in a nutshell, because I did want to at least say this, that one, go look it up. You guys can find it on the website. I already said it. But they were, when you're trying, the chicken and egg is like the customer and the driver. So when Uber began, how do you start that, right? For those of us that know, we know they just overpopulated the drivers and they were just almost giving it away to the customers. But to keep the drivers out on the road, for those of you that don't know, on the West Coast, when they were really starting, like before Grayball and all that stuff, they were paying drivers $30 an hour, active or not, just to be out there, just to stay out there. This wasn't active time. It was just $30 an hour to stay out. And so that's why all those drivers were buying cars, if you ever wondered. And some of those drivers had fallouts with the company later and whatnot. That was because of that. And then Deliveroo, Just Eat, and Uber Eats agree to, they're now tackling illegal workers in the UK. And that is a topic we're going to need to talk about because, we'll talk about that on the roundtable on Thursday. In fact, because that's a big story. And it actually gets into some really touchy stuff about the fact that you are allowed to rent out your account. This is something we've talked about in the past. You can rent out your Uber Eats account to somebody else and let them drive. So now, does that solve the illegal Dasher issues? Absolutely not, because those are illegal accounts. Does it solve the illegal migrants who are illegal Dashers? No, because again, they're illegals that don't even have a work visa, even temporary, and on an illegal account. But does it solve me from hiring out an independent contractor and that be falling on me to check them, bond them? It's too deep a story. We won't get into it today, but if you guys are interested, go into the website and you can see, I think it's in today's, and the thumbnail has a delivery bag on it on uberlyftdrivers.com. Read that article. I think you guys will find it interesting. And you guys, that's the podcast for the week. So glad you could join me. Be good to each other and earn smart, be safe. See you back here next week on Rodeo. Peace.
She was just a baby.